Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. Time to round out the Was It Any Good Though series for our existing classes by looking at a very recent addition to World of Warcraft, the Demon Hunter. As always, we're going to have some main points to cover throughout the duration of the video, such as Blizzard's approach to their third new class, the Demon Hunter starting experience, their PvE, Mythic Plus and Raid performance, how they fared in PvP, and their tier sets, as well as a few of their more important legendaries that they were given in Legion. Despite having existed in various forms since as far back as Vanilla, and Blizzard considering introducing a Demon Hunter at the time of TBC, they weren't quite ready to make that step and add a new class at that point in time. In fact, the Demon Hunter was a consideration to being added during Wrath of the Lich King, but it was discarded then as the idea just didn't make much sense with the theme of the expansion overall. Fast forwards a few more years, and Legion being the next big thing after Warlords of Draenor concluded, and now was the perfect time to bring a class that players had seen throughout Warcraft history, lore and boss fights come to life and be playable at our hands. The Demon Hunter archetype dated way back to Vanilla even, with Lorimus Thalapides chilling out in Azshara. The quest to talk to him is even called the Demon Hunter. The class was brought front stage during TBC with Illidan Stormrage, Latharis the Blind in Serpent Shrine Cavern, and Altruis the Sufferer in Nagrand. Let's not forget the literal armies of training Demon Hunter initiates at the Temple of Karabor, or Black Temple as it was then known. Demon Hunters were always a bit morally grey, we all love that phrase by now I'm sure, than other class archetypes. Monks are pretty clearly good guys, Death Knights were pretty clearly not. Demon Hunters are the embodiment of sacrifice, losing a portion of their humanity to gain strength needed to reach their goals, and as Illidan says himself,
"Now, you are prepared."
Speaking of which, Demon Hunters were the third new class brought into the game. Had Blizzard learned much from how the Death Knight and later on the Monk went? I would say yes. So Death Knights on release were more or less the most overpowered class we have ever seen in the history of WoW. Like, they were bonkers over the top. Hero class, remember? Monks were okay, not bad, but not exactly the most exciting thing ever. Demon Hunters were a good medium between the two, a bit more on the OP side for sure, and I said it originally when I mentioned Demon Hunters in the Legion vid, but I don't mind a class being a bit on the OP side. It helps to hype them up and make people want to try them out a little bit more. Demon Hunters were unique in more way than one too. They were the first class to only ever have two specializations, those being Havoc, the melee DPS spec, and Vengeance, the tanking spec, which I don't mind as a concept, and it should have certainly made them a bit more easy to balance when you'd have to deal with a third specialization to consider. Though in some ways a possible Dark Ranger archetype could have been born as their ranged DPS for their third specialization, focused around throwing glaives, potentially going into melee sometimes for a few hits, but doing the majority of their damage from a distance. But this was never to be though. I know plenty of people are holding out for this kind of idea to be a class in of itself, but it feels like that boat has kind of sailed now. It wasn't done with the Demon Hunter, and there's no new class announced for Shadowlands. Moving on to the Demon Hunter starting experience then. Much like Death Knights, they had their own little introductory series of quests on Mardoom, which is a flashback of a time when you and your allies are sent on a mission by Illidan, during which you learn the basics of your class, learn some abilities, and get a general grip of what it means to be a Demon Hunter. Also, you started at level 98, which was pretty cool, and by the end of the scenario, you come forwards in time and are broken out of your prison in the Vault of Wardens to learn the Legion has returned, and it's time for you as a Demon Hunter to take up your glaives once again and do what you do best. Right from the outset, a lot of work was taken to make the Demon Hunter look really cool. Loads of their own unique animations, much like the Monk had received. Way more customizations on the character creation screens, including horns, tattoos, more piercings. I guess they had to make them be able to stand out quite a bit more, since there are only two races that are able to be Demon Hunters, those being Night Elves for the Alliance and Blood Elves for the Horde. It's some lore thing, in case you're wondering why. Illidan likes elves, I guess. The whole class design revolves around mobility. This class can really move. Not only that, but they also have double jump, which must have been a real nightmare to design around, suddenly having a class that can get up to areas that nobody else really could previously. They also had a built-in glide function too. Their mobility is excellent vertically and horizontally. Felrush and Vengeful Retreat also made it pretty impossible for basically any class, maybe apart from the Monk, to keep up with them, on top of their mastery just giving them more base movement speed for the Havoc spec. The Demon Hunter also had a new resource given a different name for each specialization, Fury for Havoc and Pain for Vengeance. Both are pretty much the same thing. They're a builder, spender kind of class, having a number of ways to generate their resource and then spending them on powerful attacks. And in essence, they're very simple, but do certainly have some more complexity to them, or at least they did so early on into Legion. Let's talk PvE. Demon Hunters certainly made an impression on the PvE scene following their release, though far more so in one aspect of the game than others. Historically, raiding has been a big endgame objective in PvE for any character. Legion brought us Mythic Plus, a far different endgame objective where dungeons would continually scale up and up in difficulty. This lended itself to a far different skill set than raids did, and the Demon Hunter skill set fit that very well. Powerful mobility in all specializations, a 20-yard range instant cast hard CC, as well as an interrupt, an offensive magic dispel. They brought incredibly strong burst AoE with Blade Dance, Eye Beam, Fell Rush, and their legendary active, Fury of the Illidari and Mythic Plus. And Mythic Plus really lends itself well to all of these strengths. Demon Hunters quickly rose to be one of those classes you pretty much wanted in any Mythic Plus run, and you still continue to do so today. As for raiding, it was a little more of a mixed bag. I guess I should talk a little bit more about Vengeance too, the Demon Hunter tanking spec. It didn't quite get off to see the widespread play that Havoc did, and indeed feels like one of those specs in WoW which are almost doomed to mediocrity or barely ever see play at the top end of the charts. The Demon Hunter tank in of itself had issues which other tanks at the time, and even moving forwards, don't. And you know how things in WoW go, if you aren't the best, you're the worst. Well, maybe that's a bit extreme, but Vengeance really didn't get off to a hot start. Even in BFA now, since their release, as far as I remember, they have never been the best tank to bring to any PvE scenario. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Demon Hunter tanks. So these issues I'm talking about include things like the resource being more limited than other tanks had, since you needed to constantly generate pain to spend on mitigation, which other tanks didn't really have to do. They were either mana bound, which at this point in time was an infinite resource for tanks, or swimming in rage, which double dipped from taking or dealing damage. Your damage intake was extremely RNG heavy. Your main mitigation was a flat increase to parry and a small physical damage taken decrease. Get unlucky, it's like you have next to no mitigation active. Your personal cooldowns were comparatively weak. Your big, powerful cooldown, Metamorphosis, was a bit of extra pain generation and 30% more health, and had a 3-minute cooldown baseline. This meant very little when you were dependent on RNG for your mitigation to work in the first place. Though Vengeance did have good utility, but it was also outshone here by other classes who had that utility as well as just being a more sturdy tank. Spells like Sigil of Chains and Silence are some of my favourite pieces of utility a tanking class has. Vengeance also had very good AoE capabilities with a Spirit Bomb build. This did leave you even more vulnerable to burst damage than the other specializations though, but at least it was fun to blast through lower content. Vengeance struggled. Early in Legion, Guardian Druids did everything better than everybody else, all the way up to about the Nighthold, at which point Monks started to scale up and Stagger was buffed, and they became the go-to tank from then onwards. Havoc, though, was a solid pickup. Better in Mythic Plus, like I've mentioned, but in raids it certainly didn't hurt to bring one of them along at least. It packs an AoE stun, a raid-wide damage reduction, or sometimes a damage reduction, that being Darkness. I know I've been saved from certain death by this ability before. It's great when it works, it's just, you know, getting it to work. And then they have their usual great priority damage, raw AoE, and few classes can put on that instant pressure like a Havoc Demon Hunter can, and it fits well to the class identity: fast, agile, lethal. There was also a Demon Hunter build that emerged as the go-to right at the start of Legion, which I really enjoyed personally, and is my favourite Demon Hunter spec to ever have existed, still holding true today. This was the Momentum build. It all centered around a talent you have that increase your damage by 20% for a few seconds after having used a Vengeful Retreat or Fell Rush. This meant you actively needed to put your mobility cooldowns into your rotation to get the most out of it. This is a great example of maximum effort DPS giving the best results, as it should be. This spec was fast and furious, and it did amazingly well against multiple targets. Throw Glaive was incorporated into the specialization as well, and I'll give you a rundown of the talents on the screen now as I'm talking through this. It was overall a very involved spec where you're spinning several plates at once. It had a real skill cap to it, making sure momentum stays up, Throw Glaive is on cooldown, and that you're keeping your abilities on cooldown and your damage over time effects up. This is everything a great DPS spec should look like in a snapshot here. Big fan of this. In time, unfortunately, it was outscaled by the demonic build, which pretty much just wanted you to press your cooldowns on cooldown. It's still like that today for Demon Hunters, which is a shame. The momentum build was very well supported by legendaries too, which we will look at a little bit later. But before we do that, let's have a little PvP chat. Now, I'll admit, by the time Legion was around, I wasn't exactly the most avid PvPer anymore, but I'll do my best to give you an idea of what the Demon Hunter was like. It's also worth a mention that by Legion, that PvP as a whole had had a massive rework. Now there are stat templates and PvP talents, and all of this was meant to address those long-standing issues that Blizzard were making life very hard for themselves by attempting to balance one set of talents for both PvE and PvP content. However, what it kind of did instead was make everybody impossible to kill, and matches started to go on for longer and longer and became dampening meta games and mana battles. Fortunately, the Demon Hunter fit well into this meta, as well as having some exceptionally powerful PvP talents given, like Detainment, Reverse Magic, and of course, Mana Rift. It was Mana Rift that let Demon Hunters play the dampening game well. This, combined with them essentially being unpeelable due to all their mobility, meant that they pick a caster and chase them relentlessly until they go They had similar strengths to PvE here really, strong burst, very mobile, and they were a solid addition to the PvP scene. Their one weakness, as with PvE, was their low amount of armor. One hard CC at a good time could easily see the Demon Hunter go down. Let's finish this up checking tier sets and some of the more impactful legendaries out. And just so you know, tiers had 6 pieces, and each had a 2 and a 4 set. Legendaries took some gear slots more or less permanently throughout the expansion as well, so it varied which pieces you wanted quite a bit more. Tier 19 were the vestments of Second Sight. Demon Hunter sets always looked a bit interesting to me, shall we say. The bonuses were functional, though not exactly too exciting, more resources and more chance to crit. Most importantly, you would get resource refund if Chaos Strike crit, so it wasn't half bad. As for Vengeance, similar kind of thing. The main benefit was higher uptime on Demon Spikes, which, as we went over earlier, already wasn't that great to begin with. Tier 20 is the Demon Bane armor from Tomb of Sargeras. Pretty fancy looking set. The Havoc 2 and 4 set boil down to Press Blade Dance, and it's a bit better. Once again, it's good, but it's not exactly exciting, is it? The Vengeance one though did add some more depth to the spec for sure, with 2 new different things to track. This is the kind of thing I like to see from tier sets. Soul fragments would spawn from enemies after you hit them with certain attacks or defeat them, and were used for self-healing, and now you had another purpose to spread them out. Soul Cleave was used pretty frequently by default, so long as you weren't the Spirit Bomb build. Tier 21 from Antorus the Burning Throne was when the demonic I-Beam spec fully took over for Demon Hunters, and the set bonus made I-Beam extremely strong. It already did good damage, now it did amazing damage on top of having a massive haste buff afterwards. Very, very powerful Havoc set. As for Vengeance, it was making your not very good cooldowns come up a bit faster. Finally, we're going to have a quick look at some legendaries. They were such a huge part of Legion, and were like additional talents is how I enjoyed thinking of them, and often changed the way you played a little bit. These are the updated tooltips, so the stats will be far lower than they would have been in Legion, but it's the effects on the actual items that interest us here. The big go-to day one to the end of Legion that every Havoc Demon Hunter wanted was Anger of the Half Giants. Simple effect, give you more resources to spend, which makes everything you do as a Demon Hunter tick around faster, even though it had a pretty wide range of RNG. This paired up very well with Delusions of Grandeur. Spend more Fury, get more Metamorphosis, more haste, more powerful abilities, more Fury, leading to more metas. It was all what the Demon Hunter was about, getting as much meta uptime as possible. Early on during the momentum build before this, the Moarg Bionic Stabilizers were very powerful, stacking with talents like Bloodlet and Glaive Mastery. However, this didn't last too long before the I-Beam specs took over too, which led us to items like Radon's Cascading Eyes, insane item in Mythic Plus. You could get back-to-back I-Beams hitting enough targets, which next to nobody could compete with in terms of sheer burst damage. Add on the tier 21 set bonus and you'll have one very scary class on your hands. Vengeance unfortunately didn't fare all too better with legendaries either. The big one to get was Archimonde's Hatred Reborn, which more or less every single tank wanted, easy to see why. Very powerful defensive cooldown which Demon Hunters needed to bulk up their weak cooldowns. This was often combined with Synodaria the Symbiote for more defensive capability, also not a Demon Hunter specific legendary. There we go then, a rundown of the third class addition to World of Warcraft. You know, I expected that we would have gotten another class in Shadowlands. The format has always been odd numbered expansion gives us a new race or allied race, and every even numbered expansion gives us a new class. This is the first time we've broken that streak. Anyways, the Demon Hunter in Legion. Was it any good though? I'd have to give it half of a yes. Havoc was for sure a real powerhouse of a melee class that brought a real feel of relentlessness and power to your hands, with their unique animations, double jumps, high burst, glaives, and everything else that made it such a cool class to play overall. Vengeance certainly was equally great in the looks department, even with a separate and more bulky looking metamorphosis form, but performance wise it never really found its footing and continues to struggle today, which is quite a shame. Overall though, Demon Hunters, pretty cool. That's it then. Who knows when I'll be checking out over a new class again. I will be doing an update for our classes so far from Classic to TBC of course, but I'm saving that for a bit later on down the line. Do we have any Demon Hunter re-rollers from WoD to Legion here? Or perhaps people who even still main it today in BFA? What were your experiences of the class in Legion? Do you think I got anything wrong? Do you think I missed anything? Hit me up below and let me know what you think. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one very soon. If you like what you see, give the video a like and subscribe, as there'll be plenty more to come. Take care guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.